Good morning once again. First of all, I need to apologize for Ahmed. He had some unfortunately serious private issues, so that's why he couldn't come. But next year he already confirmed. So, nevertheless, we have Zoran Djordjevic, the CEO of Tolar, and it's really my great honor and pleasure to lead and moderate this panel here today, because I'm personally quite a big fan of blockchain and the whole technology in the background. I know that, and you all know that pharma is still quite suspicious, same as many other industries, but today we would like to give you a better glimpse what, for instance, blockchain might do and what blockchain stands for, right? And as you can see, actually the main purpose is to introduce you to blockchain technology in a much more better and simpler way. So I would like to start with Bitcoin, right? Because as you know, it's one of the most hyped tech terms in the last 10 years. And what's very interesting is that people, at the end of the day, know really little about it, right? And still, the vast majority thinks when you say blockchain equals Bitcoin, and vice versa, which is completely wrong, right? Because Bitcoin itself, in its essential, is a cryptocurrency, while blockchain is its technology and all beauty which is going. So actually think about blockchain as an exchange model. And we as human beings, we exchange lots of things. Actually, the whole civilization is based on exchanging something. Exchanging ideas, exchanging, for instance, value, money, etc. But the fuel of today's economy is exchanging data. And data is for sure maybe the most intriguing and most important thing. And that's why I would say blockchain and its technology fundamentals can really make a huge improvement. So on stage we have Zoran, as already announced. He's the CEO and founder of Tolar. Just for your information, Tolar did ICO in November last year, and they raised $6 million US, which means we speak about a really serious blockchain company, who in short is an Ethereum competitor. And I believe you all know about Ethereum, since Ethereum is one of the most famous blockchain technologies. But let's ask Zoran, and first of all, let's simplify the things. Let's start from the very beginning. What are the building blocks and foundations of blockchain?
Well, thank you, Dario, for the introduction. So, I don't know how many of you is actually understanding blockchain. Is any of the companies you are working for experimenting currently with the blockchain? Can I see some hands, if any of the companies? So we have one colleague, so maybe we'll have a question from you at the end. Okay, so how many of you are playing with cryptocurrencies?
Don't be shy.
Okay, so as Dario said at the beginning, there was a negative impact of cryptocurrencies on the blockchain technology, and I agree completely with Dario. We should at the beginning separate Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies and blockchain as a technology, which is the underlying technology of all the cryptocurrencies. If you want to talk simply about the blockchain, what blockchain currently is, it's just a distributed ledger. So distributed database where you can keep all the copies of your data secure, transparent, and nobody can play with this data, and it's immutable. I have seen in previous presentations that few of the cases that Pharma is currently doing is heavily depending on data security and data accessibility and the correctness or rightness of the data. So by using blockchain, you can practically easily resolve all of these issues. But I would go a little bit before the popularity of the blockchain and the Bitcoin and Ethereum. When we started, let me first introduce a short story with you. I'm actually coming from academia, so that should be a benefit for the topic I'm talking about. So I'm not the crypto fan, and I'm not talking about the crypto at all. We started this journey in 2014, when we wanted to see what is the current trends in new emerging technologies that are coming and how they are going to affect the business. And at that time, there was a couple of new technologies coming, i.e. machine learning, blockchain, and big data. And there was one concept of digital vortex saying that how industries are going to be affected in the next couple of years. And guess who was at the end of the vortex? Pharma and oil and gas as all traditional industries that are going to suffer at least from the new technologies. But then when we started to go a little bit more in depth about the technology, we have found out that the blockchain is technology which was pretty stigmatized by the cryptocurrencies, anti-money laundering procedures and everything else, and we wanted to take a close look at the blockchain. So we started to explore, we put together all our brains, tech team, mathematicians, to see why blockchain is not so sexy and attractive for the industry to be implemented, because it can solve a lot of problems that industry currently had when you deal with the databases. And as Dario said, we actually had a very good product which is currently competing with Ethereum, and we are launching our product in June this year. We are currently in the test phase, so we are going to solve all the problems blockchain currently has, and we are going to be ready to onboard industry and governments on our platform.
May I just ask one question, sorry to interrupt. From your perspective, what are the essential foundations of blockchain? So is this smart contract, is this, I don't know, something else?
Smart contract is just one aspect of the blockchain technology, but the main characteristics and main foundations of blockchain is that all your data that you are putting on the blockchain are secure, are immutable, you are practically avoiding silos, and you have the valid data. Colleagues were saying a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'm currently writing an article by my colleague who is owning a AI studio, and I guess we have somebody from AI industry here. And you know, AI is depending heavily on data. And as all the technology that is depending on data, if you put rubbish in, you have rubbish out. So exactly. My current research is dealing with artificial intelligence and blockchain, and the working title is Brother in Arms, because I think, and my colleagues agree from the AI industry, that blockchain can serve as a good partner for artificial intelligence to practically validate the data, to make sure that the data that AI is using is valid, is not being tampered with, and is practically coherent data that can be put in the AI and machine learning, and you have the right results at the end.
To be frank, what bothers me really, and if you think about it, it's really the truth. I mean, I believe that all of you use still Facebook, right? Just as an example. And if you're an old user, like 10 years ago or even older, using Facebook, I believe you see a trend where at the very beginning, let's say the last 5 to 10 years, people posted absolutely everything on Facebook. Like, I'm going for dinner, I'm going for toilet, I'm going here and here, you know. Which means that there is even a joke, as you all know, that you can go for dinner even without posting this on Facebook. It's still a dinner, right? And what happens now, and I believe that you all agree with this, we see a huge decline in terms of Facebook content. Because how I use, for instance, Facebook these days, is that actually I'm just having a news feed. I'm just feeding data from different media, just having an overview. So actually I'm not posting anything more or less on Facebook. I'm having maybe 1 or 2 posts per day, per year, sorry. And I see this trend coming on the overall basis, which means we had huge increase of data there, or in content. It becomes better and better because they're introducing more and more functions, but now we see a huge decline. Can blockchain fix this, for instance, issue? Because I believe when you have too much data, you can't see the trees in the forest, right?
Well, yeah, the main purpose of the blockchain is not to narrow the data. The main purpose of the blockchain is practically to prove that the data is true, that is correct, and that is the same copy of the data exists along the blockchain. Because if you don't know the blockchain, how the process works, if you have the shared database or distributed ledger, whatever you do on this ledger, for example, imagine a consortium of pharmaceutical companies dealing with clinical trials or with medical records. So every company in the consortium would have access to the same data. But whoever would like to access certain data, all the participants would immediately see the change in the data. So at the end of the journey, you would have the results based on the same data for all the companies in the blockchain or in the process, which will probably save a lot of time and a lot of energy and decrease the price in medical trials that we have seen in the previous presentations, how the medical trials are becoming expensive and more expensive, because you have the big data. But the main purpose is, if I can be more open, you know, the blockchain is not a silver bullet for anything. But if you have a use case that you need to share the data with certain partners, and if these partners need to change the data or write the data, then you should think about the blockchain. Why? Because every change that is done in the system will be seen from your side and the partner side. and nobody can exchange this data or change the data or tamper the data without the consent of the whole network. That's the practically reason why the whole technology is called blockchain. All the data you are producing, you're changing, need to be approved with all the partners in the network and put on the blocks which are creating the blockchain.
So we see a huge increase in terms of transparency, right?
Of course, because as I said, the data is transparent, but also what is important, especially for pharma and healthcare industry, that the data is hashed, which means that you cannot see who is behind the data. So imagine you have medical records and you just see the hash. You don't see the patient's name, gender, anything. You can just see the diagnosis and the hash. So all the pharma industry practically use this hash data because it's not important for you who is the person. So it's completely aligned with the GDPR in the European Union or the privacy acts in the rest of the world, and it can solve this problem as well.
Do you believe that patients can gain back trust with such models?
Yeah, I think because I don't know how many people you have here from Croatia. I have just read an article yesterday that there was some lady from politics who was practically suing a hospital because they published their medical data without sanitizing any of its personal data. But there are also business models that are building from the patient side through the blockchain, meaning that pharma companies are anyhow buying the big data from the third-party providers. But this way, by using or utilizing blockchain, you are also giving patients the right to manipulate or to practically be owner of their own data, and they can even sell their own data to the pharmaceutical companies.
Right, but on the other hand, when you have too much freedom, sometimes actually it can also hurt the overall model, which means that do you believe that transparency has potentially some serious issues? Because we saw that in case of Bitcoin, where for instance on some blocks, they are stored some pornography, for instance, and you cannot delete this. And in that case, for instance, you can store different kind of data. So how to overcome, for instance, such kind of messy data?
Okay, so well, there are two ways. First, as every technology, you can use it for good or for bad.
Indeed.
So it's the same with the internet. In the other side of the story, there are two ways how you can do the blockchain platforms. You can use the public ones, like Ethereum, Bitcoin, or all the others that are currently on the market, or you can have a private network. So in private networks, permission-based networks, only network members who are authorized by the central authority can access the network, can put the data on the network, and can change the data on the network. So by using this, you can exactly know who, at what time, put certain content on the blockchain. So this gives you a lot of transparency, and when you talk about potential use cases, maybe for the pharma industry, I don't know if you remember a vaccine scandal that happened in China recently with the children vaccines, when they implemented blockchain to track the complete supply chain of the vaccine from the time of manufacturing till the time when the kid got the vaccine in their head. So you can immediately see in every step of the supply chain who was in the contact with the drug, who could be potentially, guilty one for replacing the right vaccine with the false one.
Mm-hmm. And do you see some other use cases in pharma which are, let's say, serious to implement?
Well, besides traceability or supply chain, you can deal with drug counterfeiting, which is practically related to this one. You can have the use case in the area of exchanging medical records between hospital physicians and the pharma, because you can anonymize the patient data, and you can have the potential use cases with medical trials.
Okay, sounds good. You have a question?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Do we have like?
You can say it and I will repeat it.
So basically, when I read the title of commercial models with blockchain, I was referring to was mainly because of legal issues when you need to ensure that the doctor is looking at the right message and has to proof for all of this. So if you get into a lawsuit, you can prove that we have actually this transaction happened.
Mm-hmm.
There is a problem with this because we don't have a central authority. I mean, this system should work with a central authority issuing tokens, and pharma particularly applying this model. I see very few or very low value being a single pharma company doing my own hyperledger and issuing my own system. Ideally, if to scale this commercial model as a benefit, we should have, I don't know if the FBI is the having, you know, a blockchain database where we can actually.
Yeah, I think the question about the conversation was more for Ahmed because they are developing the project for this. But if I can go back to your comment, I agree, and this is what is the key.
Okay, please.
Okay, I will try to rephrase because I cannot repeat. The question was that the title of the topic was developing alternative commercial models for pharma by using the blockchain, and this was mostly related to Ahmed's part because they are developing a product which is dealing with this part. But the colleague also mentioned that it's not very feasible for just one pharmaceutical company to have such a blockchain network utilizing the data that is provided by doctors or hospitals. And I completely agree, you should have some central authority, but then you should have a consortium blockchain, which is private for all the pharmaceutical companies, which could share the data among themselves. I think there was a couple of slides in the previous presentation also saying about this data sharing and practically minimizing the cost of gathering the valid data throughout the whole ecosystem of pharmaceutical companies. And yes, who is the central authority is you know something that pharma would probably need to agree on. But you know, if all the pharmaceutical company would invest just a small portion of the money they are currently investing in the blockchain platform, they could easily have secure, valid data which they can work with.
Do you personally believe this is possible?
We have a chicken egg problem. Who stopped? And I think it should be the regulators, like the FDA or
yeah, let me give you an example from the other industry, so maybe it will be an eye-opener for you and the others. For example, banks. You know how banks are working, they have huge costs with inter-settlements, you know, closing accounts, etc. So they are trying for 2 or 3 years already to fork Ethereum, to you know, do all kind of stuff, closed networks, etc. because they would like to practically minimize the cost. You know, bankers, you know, it hurts them if it costs a lot. So this is one use case. For example, of IATA, you know, International Air Transport Association, they have, when you are flying, for example, in Dubrovnik, you buy your ticket. You have to pay for your agent is paying for our airline company, another airline company, third airline company, etc. So this process of money traveling throughout the ecosystem lasts between 30 and 45 days, and it costs between 15 and 20% of your ticket. So imagine you have a closed blockchain system with all airplane companies in the world. At the moment you are buying ticket, your ticket is, I don't know, $1,000. It becomes 1,000 IATA coins, and instantly all the companies are getting their part of the coins, and they can replace it on the exchange again into dollars. So it's in terms of minutes, not 45 days or not 20% cost for the ticket. So this is just one example. You are dealing just with data. You are not selling or you are not commercializing currently. But for example, you know, also pharmaceutical companies can easily become the providers of big data for other pharmaceutical companies if they create the ecosystem for the hospitals generating certain data that is needed for their clinical research.
Okay, thanks. No further questions? Just personal question for Tolar. I mean, what worries me, or let's say is quite interesting for me to ask. I follow this, let's say, ICOs and funding of different blockchain companies. And you see, and you saw in many cases where easily they collect like 20, 30 million US dollars. And if you look, 20 or 30 million dollars for any startup is a huge amount of money because you can really pay the developers and to build up the product. But at the end of the day, not so many actually blockchain companies made anything out of that money. So question for you, you raised 6 million US dollars, but in a bear market, which was not so good, which was, I think, a quite good success, where do you actually spend that money? I mean, it's a huge amount of money for a startup.
Luckily for us, we didn't spend it yet. So if I can go back to the beginning of the story, you know, me and my partners, we are running a business school in Croatia, and we started to investigate why the blockchain was not adopted by the industry. And since there is just one colleague, I will tell you the current blockchain solutions are having issues with speed and scalability of the system, and also the energy consumption that Bitcoin is currently using is not making it profitable. So we started to work on this project 2.5 years ago. As Dario said, last year we had an ICO, and we managed to create a platform that is keeping all the good benefits of blockchain in terms of anonymity, transparency, mutability, etc., but also removing from these obstacles speed, scalability, and electricity consumption with the consensus methods we brought together. And we have raised $6 million last year. It was in October. Most of this money went to developers because it was very hard to find developers who are skilled enough to work on our platform. And we are launching, as I said, our mainnet on June 20 this year, and it's practically going to be ready to compete with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it's practically currently offering 200,000 transactions per second. For those of you who are not familiar with this needed speed for any blockchain platform, let me say that Visa, during the Christmas shopping, is having 50,000 transactions per second, so this is 4 times faster than Visa, who is a bank card processor. And we are also having minimum requirements for data storage and electricity.
Okay, so you can even save some electricity while using Tolar, right?
You cannot save it, but what you are using is just the power for the computer. It's nothing else.
So, thank you very much, Zoran.
Thank you,
If
Dario.
no questions, we can close and we can start the talk again.